thank you all for coming this evening. I appreciate your time. I know that after 5 o'clock, our tummies start rumbling and get in the way of such fine events as this. But I appreciate you all coming and being part of it. So as the Vice President of STC-ETC, I kind of got involved by my work, of course, as a technical writer and editor at Siemens. But as I have kind of delved more into the field of TechCom, I'm reminded more and more of the connections between what I did previously as an English instructor, holding a master's degree in English literature, and what I do now as a TechCom writer for Siemens. So there's kind of an interesting path that I can kind of see tracing backwards from now to whenever I first began. And so I kind of want to give a little bit of an introduction to those who are interested in making the same journey. It's an important one for those who are looking for a different kind of way to kind of flex their English muscles, right? Their analytical, rhetorical muscles. So I want to share a little bit about my experience and hopefully communicate that it's not impossible, right, to go from knowing nothing about TechCom to being involved in this wonderful field that we all know and love. So, just a little bit of introduction here by means of introduction, if it would not prevent me from technical errors. It's always ironic whenever the TechCom folks have technical errors, right? Nope, that's not what I wanted. Sorry. Hold on one second. This is getting me with the HDMI interface here. How embarrassing. Okay. Rewind all the way back here. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back to it. All right, so a little bit of background about me. A number of you are kind of aware a little bit of my story, but not everyone is, I realize, and so I wanted to get a little bit of information. Sorry about that. Okay, here we are. So anyway, that's me on my wedding day in 2018, right? So there I am, 40 pounds lighter. A little bit about me. I've always been a lover of words, right? From an early age, I had a facility with the English language. I really enjoyed being able to impress the adults, right, with my vocabulary and such. I still have a dentist to this day who marvels over the fact that as a 9-year-old, I was able to make comment on the shards of my teeth that were going everywhere as he drilled for a cavity, right? And so to this day, 24 years later, he still makes mention of this. This has always been something I've had a passion for. And part of that, a large part of that, I owe to my mother, who homeschooled myself and my siblings throughout school, right? Kindergarten through 12th grade. And because of this experience, I am very much a self-starter, right? I was kind of made to be independent in that way as a learner. And as a result, I was able to take kind of control of my education to some degree or other, and I became very studious, aka I was a giant nerd, right? Still am, love D&D and fantasy literature and all that kind of good stuff, right? But this studiousness manifested in a degree undergraduate at Covenant College, outside of Chattanooga on Lookout Mountain, and then right down the mountain, a master's degree in English literature at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell. We'll talk about career more in a moment. Oops, this thing, okay. However, my motivation day to day is my family. This is my 7-month-old son, Olin Reese. He is smiling for his 7-month picture there. He's just full of energy, curious, just really a joy to us. And this is Chelsea, my bride of 5 years as of 27th, which is a little over a week away. So she is a wonderful mom, wonderful support to me. So that's a little bit about my family.
Very handsome child, obviously.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you know.
Taking after his mom.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. You can't deny genetics, right? You know. No, he does have. You can't see it here as much, but he has these just striking blue eyes. My wife has kind of blue-green, kind of seafoam eyes, and so he's lucky because he didn't get my boring brown ones, right? But so, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. This thing has the weirdest arrangement. There we go. Okay. However, with all of that education, right, what did I do? Well, having always desired to teach, teaching English in particular, literature, rhetoric, I began right after grad school. Was kind of a weirdo, right? I was 23, starting teaching in my career. So from August 2015 to January 2020, I worked at Pell City State Technical Community College here in town. Simultaneously, I was also a lecturer here at UTK, where I continue my work, thankfully, as a lecturer in the English department. Teaching mostly freshman composition, business writing, these kinds of things. But that's kind of where I get to, you know, kind of flex my muscles, keep myself, you know, fit for my love of English. But in January 2021, so as we all know, right, this whole thing called COVID happened, right? And in 2020, it kind of came to a head. There was kind of a boiling point for me, my family, and I came to realize that without a PhD, which would be another 5 years of not making a lot of money and working really hard, you know, the latter I don't mind, but the former not so much, I wouldn't be able to get a meaningful teaching position, unfortunately. So my wife and I decided it was time for me to look for something different. So after, you know, searching high and low, looking at all kinds of different opportunities, asking myself the question, how do I apply the experience I have through my education, but also as an educator? How do I apply this in a capacity that helps industry, right, where there's perhaps, admittedly, a little bit more money, right, as well as a lot of opportunity. And so what I came upon was to research the field of technical communication. And it is, as I found out, a lot more than just, you know, your car manual or the like, right? There's a lot more to it, thankfully. But through a little bit of research and through some networking, I was able to meet Dr. Hurst here, who was just a wonderful help in just kind of asking me the right questions, getting me thinking the right direction, and then being kind enough to believe in me and recommend me for an opportunity at Siemens in Johnson City. So in January 2021, I was able to obtain a position as a contract worker due to COVID. They weren't able to hire full time at the moment. I was a contract worker as a technical writer and editor. So this really changed things for me and got me to kind of understand a little bit better where I was going for my career. So that was definitely a big encouragement. So the question becomes, I've been asking myself in the years since, how can I best apply what I learned in my education and my time as an educator to my work in the field of TechCom? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So I ask myself these questions. As a student of English, what did I learn? Some of these things will no doubt feel very familiar, sound very familiar to those in the English department, those who are gathered here who might watch this recording. So I started to kind of make a list, right? Well, in my training in literary analysis, for instance, in understanding rhetoric, things like genre rules, things like consideration of audience, rhetorical purpose, these kinds of things. I really got to pick up a couple of tools which helped me to think critically and analyze the written word for various purposes. I learned to be observant of style and structure, largely meaning MLA, right? We all know and love the good old Modern Language Association. Of course, we are obsessed with our grammar, right? We're kind of known for this, infamous for this, right? So grammar rules, understanding what an audience expects, particularly based upon genre, right? Every kind of writing, as I tell my students, every type of communication, has a different set of rules that we like to call genre. If they're well observed, then it can be a successful piece of communication, right? Lastly, as a student, I was able to pick up problem-solving skills, right? As an instructor on the other side of things, right? I've come to know the importance of explaining assignments, for instance, well to students. And as a student, I learned to address assignment prompts, understanding what my instructors had written, and to do so in a way that met their expectations. So all of these things I picked up as a student of English for 6 years. They may sound familiar to you, right? You can kind of take an assessment of your own education, your own kind of thought processes as you've gone through your English program. From 2015 to 2021, when I was teaching, what skills did I use as an instructor? Before Siemens, what did I do on a daily basis as an instructor that would help me to kind of inform my work in TechCom? Well, first of all, there was the organization of texts, largely class materials, right? Everything from the syllabus, which has a very particular set of rules, very particular set of expectations for that contract that's so sacred, right, between students and teacher. And so the organization of text, class materials, creating clear and logical instructions for assignments. How do you complete this? What are the steps? Students need structure. So this is the kind of thing that I was able to identify that translates into what I would do in TechCom later. Writing for an audience which would use what I wrote. This is kind of a big deal, right? There is a lot of translatability between the assignment sheet or the handout, right, in the classroom, and what I would go on to do, writing online helps, manuals, etc., type information, whatever it may be, in technical communications. Lastly, one of the most important things that you can pick up, just as an individual period, and as a professional in particular, is what I call soft skills, right? So in English 295, business writing, really focus on the difference between soft and hard skills. Soft skills meaning people skills, your ability to coordinate, collaborate with others, to be, efficient and likable, right? For lack of a better term. So navigating in such a way where you don't seem like a tyrant in the classroom, right, is really important. So I've tried to learn that over the years. So all of these things I was able to identify as what I picked up, spazzing out here, what I picked up in my time in academia. So then how do I translate that into TechCom? Well, the biggest way for us to answer that question is to identify what actually is TechCom, right? I've told Dr. Hurst before, during our conversations, before I even started with Siemens, months before, I said, honestly, I have no idea what TechCom is. I've never heard of it, right? I mean, I can conceptualize that this is what people do, this is what you call it, but I never heard of it. I went to a small school, didn't have any access to these classes, right, kinds of things. So, according to the STC website, right, our wonderful resource here, TechCom is defined as such: a broad field which includes any form of communication that exhibits one or more of the following characteristics: communicating about technical or specialized topics, most certainly, communicating by using technology, providing instructions about how to do something regardless of how technical the task, or even if technology is used to create or distribute that communication. Kind of a mouthful, right? But there is a good definition of what TechCom, technical communication, even is as a field. But the point is that this provides value by making information more usable and accessible to those who need that information. So, again, whether it's a car manual or, helping you to network a bunch of PLCs and I/O modules, right, in a factory, such as what I do right for, there are those who need to know, how do I do this, how to do it correctly, how do I troubleshoot, and where do I find this information? And in doing so, this advances the goals of the companies or organizations that employ technical communicators. So this is the purpose, right? This is kind of the raison d'etre of the technical communicator, right? We are adding value by communicating clearly and making information accessible and easy to use, right? So with that in hand, how did I see these two sets of information kind of correlating, right? Well, I mentioned critical thinking skills and problem solving, right? A couple of things that I think I was able to pick up through my education, my time as an educator. What did this yield in my work at Siemens? Well, audience analysis is huge, right? Asking ourselves in the process of structuring a technical communication document, what does the customer need to know? How do they use the manual? Getting in the head of the user, whether that's a programmer, an installer, an engineer of some sort, right? How do we imagine that they navigate our texts, right? This is a huge question for TechCom. So this is something that I was able to answer well by kind of putting on that hat that rhetoric kind of gave me, right? By understanding different users, different needs, you need to communicate differently to those different users. So the second kind of translatable skill here was knowing how to coordinate with subject matter experts, those folks who, unlike me, right, know all of the inner workings, all the intricacies of electrical systems and the like, right, that we write about. So in order to understand difficult material well outside of my wheelhouse, right, this critical thinking and ability to kind of slow down and ask pertinent questions and communicate about them clearly with those who had the information I needed, this is a huge part of what I do day to day. Another element from my time in academia was a knowledge of style and structure, as well as the ability to organize a plan. And this kind of manifested in the need to have a strict adherence to standards, right? Whether we're ensuring safety, so for instance, I write for fail-safe products, which have certain redundancies built into them, such that you don't have, a factory exploding or running amok, right? To put it in one way. But we're ensuring safety, observing legal guidelines. There are plenty of these, as the technical communicators in the room will know. So a lot of time on that. And using appropriate tools for proper readability, given a document's genre, right? How do we structure the actual information being communicated? How is it laid out according to company standards, according to logical requirements for how it's used and how it's read? And then lastly, increasing usability, right? So knowing where that notice goes or where that warning goes not only can save you from a lawsuit, right, but also helps the user to gain value from the documentation you create. So there's just a number of ways that I saw my academic experience translating into industry with Siemens in my role as a technical writer. So then, this might beg the question, right? If someone from academia, right, someone who was who didn't have any training in TechCom, but had a whole lot of knowledge about things like rhetorical awareness, things like critical thinking skills, how does this translate? This is just one story. Mine is only one story, and it's actually not unique, as it turns out. According to the Society of Technical Communicators, technical communicators are often highly educated from a variety of fields and backgrounds. Whether you are actually formally trained in TechCom, whether you come from literature or creative writing, right, or rhetoric, whatever it may be, or even the sciences, perhaps less common, but not uncommon. And surprisingly, sorry to say this, Dr. Hurst, but TechCom as a discipline does not actually produce the largest number of technical communicators, believe it or not, according to STC statistics. Don't blame me, right? But many enter TechCom, as I did, as a second or even a third career because there's so much translatability between different skill sets. So TechCom roles are available in many different sectors. There's a lot of applicability here and a lot of variety for various folks who may have different interests. Obviously, companies like Siemens, companies like ORNL, right? Technology, IT, and solutions industries. You can write for Amazon Logistics. Probably not a bad idea at this point, right? Contracting, consulting, and outsourcing. And lastly, government institutions such as Oak Ridge National Laboratory and other similar laboratories across the United States. These are all various sectors which you might find a technical communication role in. Speaking of those roles, a technical writer or editor is not the only one, right? Nor is it the majority, right? There are information indexers, information architects, instructional designers. I've actually seen STC offer classes in instructional design, because similar to how a manual needs to be laid out in a logical manner according to certain expectations for the user, similarly, so do course materials. Again, there's a translatability, right? Technical illustrators. I work with a young woman named Amber Maid at Siemens Johnson City, who's a wonderful illustrator, very, very knowledgeable about all the tools that are used in that field. So this is another kind of facet if you are perhaps more visually inclined, right? Graphically talented. Globalization, localization specialists, usability, human factors. The list goes on, right? Teachers and researchers of technical communication. There's a wide gamut of opportunities if you have the motivation to seek it out and the skill set that's required to kind of get in to a field that may seem a little, maybe not highfalutin, but a little complicated, right? It's not as complicated as it may seem, and there's a lot of latitude for learning. It's encouraged and required. So, to conclude here, the question, oh no, a lovely image. Where could TechCom take you? I never thought starting off my career in education I would ever be where I am today. It certainly would have blown me away if you told me years ago, but I'm certainly glad that I found my way here. So, this event and STC-ETC as an organization prioritizes getting folks connected and finding opportunities for those with the talent and drive to be a technical communicator, to find those opportunities that may be available. So, thank you very much for your time and attention, and with that, I will allow the networking to commence. So, thank you all.